guess. Your missus is going to hate you. Your kid's not going to see you around much. But
yeah, I think the lowest point was when we quit our jobs, actually.
I had 30 euros in my bank account.
we secured our first customer before shipping a single line of code.
All right, let's go for intros a little bit. And I'll start with you, Frank. You've worked in sales before, Salesforge, for quite some time. What were the key moments that shaped how you think about sales and business?
So I've always been selling, I think, since pretty much the childhood. I think I've been selling something in the stalls at school. I think it was like something like I was selling like cookies. I think homemade cookies, and then I was selling apples. I remember, and then from then on, I think I've been in different places in my lifetime. Whether that's at college, washing cars, for example. That was once upon a time for charity, so not for the usual reasons of profit and stuff like that. But always being in some sort of projects and places, always having to do something with sales. And then I started my career at Google, which is a proper office job. And that's after spending some time working for the European Commission, where I didn't enjoy that too much. And the reason why I didn't enjoy that too much is it felt like there was just too much bureaucracy, even though, I always thought that after finishing my degree in international relations and politics and security, I was going to work for something like European Commission, NATO. But then with all the bureaucracy, I thought, no, that's not going to be the place for me. So yeah, I started my career really at Google. And then after that, worked definitely in support, sales, etc. And then I worked in a bunch of other SaaS companies, frontline sales. So being an account exec and leading territories, typically Europe, and then having led a sales team of 50 in my last gig. And this is where I came to a realization that there's a better way of doing things, which is essentially running a leaner and a meaner sales org. Because all the legacy softwares that are out there essentially are optimized towards bigger headcount. And yeah, we're essentially putting an end to that, and we're doing pretty good job at that. So
awesome. So I'm moving down to Daniel. You've been an engineer, currently a hackathon winner too, and now a startup founder. What pulled you into the startup world rather than big tech?
Yeah, so similar to Frank, I also started when I was like 15, just working on multiple projects, always curious about technology and things like that, and also business. I also wanted to create a business, and with technology, I just blended it together, and it was a good mix because, with software, you can scale something and make a business out of it with a relatively low cost as well. So big tech, I worked in big tech as well, but the things are not moving as fast there. And in startup, you can really have like a very big impact with what you do. So, you create something from scratch. And I also was freelancing before, where I would create projects from ground up, both front end, back end, database, like all of that. So just taking them from zero to a finished product. And I learned how to build projects essentially by myself, and had a pretty big context of how to build a startup. And that was my journey over a decade.
Okay, wow. And yourself, Dovydas, you've built and designed multiple products as well, apparently. What was your journey into software and now AI?
Yeah, so I think that the thing that Daniel mentioned is building stuff by yourself. It's a way forward to build a startup, and this is how you learn. And me personally, after graduating school, I know Daniel from the first grade, by the way. So we moved to study in Denmark, and after graduating, I got my internship in Denmark, and then I started working as a software engineer. Had my internship as well. But we were always attending with Daniel hackathons, winning first places, and we were always striving to build something from scratch. So the startup mindset was from the very beginning, and we were building multiple projects, multiple failures. So the startup thing was always in the back of our minds, even though we were working like full-time jobs, but we were always building off working hours. Yeah.
So actually, what shaped your mindset to do this? Who were the biggest influences on your careers? Maybe a mentor, a book, or a moment that changed your mindset?
I think early on, we were watching a lot of videos by Y Combinator,
Okay.
like very early on. So we got into this. We were growing up when the YouTube became a big thing. So from the very beginning, we were like sucked into the realm of YouTube, and we stumbled upon on the self-development channels and things like YC and other channels as well. So yeah, I think what's the name of the YC guy?
Siebel,
Michael Siebel, Paul Graham, I think. So those guys definitely like opened eyes to us, and especially when you're growing up in the post-Soviet Union country, it's you don't think about startups, you think about like what your parents are telling you, like that you have to go to work a normal job and don't do stupid things.
That's not just here.
Yes. Like startups, like what are those things? So it's just YouTube, all the information goes from YouTube and inspiration.
Thank you, YouTube.
Exactly. It's like Western influence in Western culture. Everything is possible. You can make it. So we definitely were influenced by that.
Nice. And well, Frank, you describe yourself as someone who outsmarts the competition. Was that always your approach, or did something push you to think that way?
I think on that topic, outsmarting competition came from my time working at SimilarWeb. So at SimilarWeb, you can see traffic of any website in the world. And most of the clients that I used to work with from different categories, both non-sensitive and sensitive categories, we were always looking at what was competition doing, where they were getting traffic, et cetera, et cetera. That's something I'm going to do later on today, checking essentially where my competitors are getting their traffic from. And then once you know that information, right, what's the strategy for your competition or the market, then you're looking to adjust, right? So you definitely don't want to be going down potentially the same sort of, let's call it the swimming lane. You want to have your own swimming lane. And, while they zag, we zig, what's the saying, anyway, so it's too early in the morning, but yeah, you essentially want to figure out, okay, if they're all going and doing this thing, I should be maybe doing that thing. But then also you definitely want to replicate some of the items potentially. And maybe I'll give you an example. Let's say a competitor is working with a particular partner, and that partner is driving all the traffic to them. I want to figure out how can I displace that particular competitor by making sure that partner works with me, So it's things like that, just to make sure that you're increasing share of voice, share of the market, share of search. We do a lot of that in the world of SEO today, right? So I'm making sure that, for example, when somebody's searching for one of our competitors, we definitely are there in top rankings, let's say on Google and stuff like that. So that's across, Google, YouTube, etc. So it's things like that, and making sure that we are dominating the minds of our ideal customer profiles that we're going after. So that's when that sort of started about 8 years ago, really. And I've taken that approach as in going after competitors. So I'm more of a red ocean guy, essentially making when there's a lot of competitors. I like the fact there's a lot of competitors. I'm always trying to figure out all the accounts of my competitors, going after them, whether that's scraping G2 reviews or scraping LinkedIn followers, or you name it. We have some also other tactics, what we call Area 51 tactics as well, that we don't disclose. But we have multiple different ways of doing things. So we are arguably more of a red ocean team rather than the blue ocean team. So.
Okay, we'll get into that. Lots to cover, but and for you guys, so we're talking about Frank's past influence, but what's a lesson from a past project or a startup that you carried to Salesforge?
Yeah, so as David mentioned, I think since 15 years old, there has never been a year where we didn't have a project, at least one. Usually it would be like two. But so we were building a lot of projects, but we didn't have sales and marketing, and that's why they didn't take off. So we really learned the hard way that, when you build a product, you need to also market and sell it. And as an engineer, it's very hard to do, because when you have your product, it's like your baby. So it's, if some customer says it's bad, it's really hard to take that feedback. And the more you don't sell it and just build it and think that just building it will take off by itself, the harder it gets, because it's just sunk cost fallacy. It gets harder to sell it every hour, every month.
Yeah, so you're building those projects, and the longer you build, the more pressure, the more pressure you get. So if you build like for 1 or 2 years, you don't even want to talk to customers because you're so afraid that it's not gonna work, and your project.
Build it and they will come.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the approach that I try to.
Facebook
Yeah, and also engineers are more maybe on introverted side usually, so they don't really want to talk to customers or sell, or so usually that's why solo engineers are not. It's hard to get successful as a founder when you're solo engineer. You need to like there's an analogy like Wozniak and Steve Jobs. You need an engineer and a sales guy.
So are you fully dependent on Frank to sell and you outsource it to him, or do you actually go through the motions and learn how to sell too?
No, yeah. Actually, like one of the things that was exciting is that, we had no idea about sales, and now we know everything.
Yeah.
So, we learned a lot from Frank, and we also had customer calls and things like that. So as a founder, it's important to be able to sell your product.
Totally.
And Frank really opened up our eyes to that world.
Yeah, we had no idea what are the sales tools. But like this is the thing about engineers, like when they get a new job or like a new project, they need to learn the industry. If it's like a medical industry, sales or crypto or whatever.
So that's a good segue to understand a little bit the why behind Salesforge and what problem kept you up at night to come up with this. So my understanding is that you saw a massive gap in sales efficiency before launching Salesforge. And what was broken in outbound sales that you decided to launch this?
Yeah, I don't think it's just outbound sales. It's just pipeline generation overall. So that applies across outbound and inbound. And back in those days, back in 2020 and even earlier, it was essentially growth at all costs, right? You sit down with your CFO, typically in January / December, and you're like, okay, this is the target that we need to hit for the year. This is how much pipeline we need to generate, and then you have these conversion rates in the funnel at every step of the funnel. So and then you look at how many heads do you need, and then you're like, okay, we need extra 20 SDRs, so sales development reps. To hit the target, right? And that's it. Because the tech that you were using, it doesn't matter which tech you would use, the conversion rates wouldn't significantly really change. And I thought that why would you want to have all these humans? That's horrible. And especially considering the fact that, so I hired, hundreds of people in my life, also fired hundreds of people in my life. For good reasons, and bad reasons maybe. I'm not sure, but essentially, hiring in sales is a bit like SaaS. You have a lot of acquisition and a lot of churn happening, right? So there's a huge attrition problem essentially in sales. And we were even hiring back in the days when I had a sales team of 50 people in advance because we were predicting that some people would leave next month. Like we did not know who would leave in the team, but we knew that people would be either fired, they would be let go, whatever, or they would leave themselves. So there's that huge problem, and a lot of sales leaders, if they've been hiring people or they've been managing teams, they know that there's this huge problem with ramp, huge problem with training people, and then yes, people will typically leave the company after a year or so. And I thought to myself, okay, so to the typical stats in sales, for every 10 salespeople that you hire, 1 is a natural, and that's max. 1 person out of 10 is natural. Then 2 to 3 people can be trained up to be somewhat good as a person that's natural. And then 60% typically is dead wood, really. Like these people should not be in sales. They're not accretive. And that's because, a lot of people, they get into sales from different sort of places in or walks of life. Essentially, they just end up in sales. And typically you are a college grad, you finish college / uni, and then you're thinking what to do with your life, and then there's a lot of sales jobs out there, and you just join sales, right? So and then some of them, it's a bit of like swim and drown situation. So you either swim and you become kind of super successful, so you're the top 40%. Or you're in the 60% bucket. So most people are in the 60% bucket. But the reason why you're hiring all these people is because there's not enough supply of these 40% out there in the world. And it's very hard, even in the interview stages, to realize whether the person is really good for sales or not. So that's why the best thing that you can do is you hire them super fast, and then you fire them even faster. But one thing that we do, for example, at Salesforge right now is we ask the person to come in for what we call a test drive, and that means essentially you're doing a 3-hour cold calling session at the Forge, just to figure out whether you're good for sales or not. So, so essentially, the reason why we've been, where we started the Forge is what we call the human problem. And the human problem that came just generally is when you analyze what's actually broken in the world of sales. So the way that I look at running an organization or sales org is really these 3 sort of bubbles. One is what we call the people bubble, then there's a process bubble, and then there's a tech bubble. Now, you understand that there's a lot of legacy tech, which leads to having more humans, and the process is all built around more people. And I think, that whole thing is just broken. It is not just doesn't apply just for sales, but it also applies for other areas like finance, etc. And we live today in a world where if you go to, say, San Francisco, to the Bay Area, you can see that most companies are just working on agentic capabilities, AI infrastructure, and all that stuff. And that's because everybody is trying to figure out ways of how to do more with less. Essentially, how can we increase the output of the 40% and reduce the 60% down to as close to 0% as possible, right? So, and that's ultimately what we're doing right now when it comes to helping companies build that sales pipeline with the least headcount possible. And we want to do that what we call with the highest probability. So probabilistic outcomes will come from big data like that we're building behind the scenes for our customers, and ultimately transitioning from what we call human execution or rules-based execution. So essentially where there's a lot of human error. So essentially humans deciding what sort of email to send, when to send that, etc. We're going to transition a lot of those decisions over to big data. So similar to how essentially Google runs their ad auctions and Facebook, etc. We're looking to do something like that in the world of sales.
So very timely, but from a product and engineering side, what made you excited about tackling this particular problem? And would have this been possible like 10 years back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, like with David, we were looking for a project when we were ready to build anything. Nothing was scaring us technologically at that point. We just wanted to have it like, being able to sell it. So that was first motivator. The second one is AI. So we were looking where can we apply AI actually, and this was perfect moment for that. And 10 years, that would be really hard without things like OpenAI. With that, the possibilities are just enormous right now. And we really got onto that wave and really used AI to the fullest, the LLMs.
And from the product standpoint, we didn't want to build like something very easy or simple, like a Chrome widget or like extension. We want to build big software, and like this is the sales tools are usually very, very complex and large. So this was a very exciting challenge for us.
Okay, so you've all had these different experiences that led you here. I'd like us to go back and to the moment where it all began. And my understanding is that, Frank, you got a message from Daniel on Y Combinator's platform. So what happened next?
Yeah, so I left my sweet comp at my company where I had a sales team of 50. Then so I was then sort of contemplating what to do with my life. This is where I came down the path of that I'm too comfortable with what I'm doing, which is selling software for somebody else. And I had literally two options back then, which is being a head of sales for another cool company. They just raised Series A. And it was a fantastic software, great CEO, great, everything was great. But then I thought to myself, damn, I'm just too comfortable. Let me become just poor, essentially. Let me do something else. And if you're a real, what I call salesperson, you always want to be in this zone of where you're not comfortable, essentially trying to learn something new. And for me, that just meant the next step was actually starting a company for the first time. Going after this, the problem that I was experiencing as a VP sales. So yes, I was then in the market. And yes, the best thing that you do if you're listening to all the YC videos and many other things, and you're trying to figure out where are the best people out there, and you just go to the to the tender of startup founders. Essentially, that's YC matchmaking platform in my eyes. That's not going to networking events, etc. Because typically there's a lot of what I would describe low quality people, startup wannabes that go to a bunch of offline events. So the likelihood of meeting good people offline is just rare. I don't think I would have met Daniel somewhere in an offline event somewhere.
Well, they're introverts, so
yes,
actually you would, because we were
For
going
that exact reason, we were going to offline events and looking for a founder.
that was-
But as Frank said, there is not many.
ineffective.
But essentially, the likelihood of meeting somebody offline is just unless you're in the Bay Area, it's just not possible. I think.
Yes.
So Bay Area is the startup capital. Things happen. Yes, you do meet super smart people literally in a coffee shop where they're discussing term sheets and a bunch of other things. But in this part of the world, it's just not going to cut it. So yeah, you go online and try and search for these good people. So I went and activated my profile on the YC, and then bam, I think the same week Daniel messages me, sends me a template saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a co-founder." It's like I bet he's blasting the same message to a bunch of people. All right, this weird dude with this weird name, messages me, looks interesting. He worked at Daniel worked at fintech. I hate fintech companies because
we'll cut that out.
No, I just hate the idea of working in a fintech company. I did have a little experience working in a fintech company, and I just there's also a thing that the thing about when you're selling something, who do you sell that piece of tech to? And I really hate the idea of selling piece of tech essentially to a CFO or to a finance person, whatever.
Not fun.
And it's not fun at all. Like the two most difficult personas out there to sell into is a CTO and a CFO.
Yeah, devs
Yes, people like Daniel. So
that don't read their emails.
But so I got an email from Daniel, and I thought, yeah, okay, this looks something unique. Because the reason why I'm saying unique is because you do see a lot of other folks on the platform, and Daniel had a very different profile to everybody else, and this is what sort of made me want to connect and sort of grab coffee, and we did literally. I believe it was next day or something. It was super fast, and they were in the coffee shop, literally next to my place, where. I think over an hour or two or something, I was explaining exactly the pain that we were going to be solving, and that yes, we'll need to build a lot of software to solve that pain.
Love it.
Daniel loved the idea. He wanted to code the same night, but I said to him, "Wait a minute, none of that was scoped out, validated, etc." And this is where you typically make a mistake because you just plow ahead and you haven't done any sort of homework essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then there was a lot of there was that sort of journey around sort of validation. So we did like about 40 interviews with different people. So chief revenue officers, SDRs, sales development reps across different geos as well, making sure that we're going after the right problem. Also during that particular phase, we also made sure we had some paid pre-orders, which is what Daniel and Dovydas love. Sending them screenshots of, hey, we secured our first customer before shipping a single line of code. We had essentially 4 of those paying customers before a single line of code, and then that gives you conviction to me and to the guys as well that hey, we're onto something here potentially.
Like a lifetime deal or what?
No, it was not a lifetime deal. I don't like lifetime deals.
AppSumo, no.
No, we did like a super good deal for 5 and 10 years. So it's not lifetime, but it's literally for a very, very long time.
5 and 10 years. Okay, that's long.
5 and a 10-year deal. Super cheap. And we just wanted to see if somebody would just pull out the credit card and pay for something. So it's not about how much this costs, etc. It's about, can we make somebody pull out the credit card and pay for something that does not exist? And if the answer is yes, and we can replicate that, so 4 was enough in our eyes. I think 10 should be the maximum, really. If we can replicate that, that's we're onto something. We should be building this, and we should be exploring this further. Because otherwise, it's building this sort of big piece of software it's a lot of undertaking.
Yeah, sure.
And we didn't want to naturally waste our time on something that we didn't have belief in ourselves.
I want to come back to, because the message you sent to Frank was, if I read correctly, it's looking for a co-founder to build whatever, as long as it's valuable. What made you take that step?
Yeah, so we basically also we had jobs, actually both of us at fintech companies, and we were thinking again to build a startup, but this time actually with sales in mind. So that was definitely different. So we decided that we need a third co-founder, which would actually, lead sales and marketing, and that's just a very important component of any business. So yeah, instead of starting something on our own and being like two co-founders, we went on searching for a third co-founder, and yeah, I signed up for that Y Combinator. David also did, and we started messaging people. So even though Frank says it was a template, it was a custom template because he was actually in Vilnius, so it was a little bit modified for that situation. But yeah, we had like websites about us where, like if you're interested in us, you just can go and read about us. And basically, yeah, the template said, we are ready to build whatever, as long as it's valuable to people. Technically, we didn't have any challenges. We just need like sales and marketing. So it was a perfect fit. And yeah, that was what made me send that message to Frank.
And then Daniel introduced you as, what is it? A friend who might be interested. What were your first impressions of Frank? Here we go.
So yeah, when you are on YC matchmaking platform, the ratio between like engineers and other people is like maybe like 10% to 90%.
In which way?
Engineers like are in the huge demand on that platform. So Daniel said like we messaged multiple people, but actually we received even more messages. We received like hundreds of messages, and it's very difficult for an engineer to filter out who is good and who is gonna be a good match, because everyone, like every non-technical person, he has an idea. He just needs to build it, and then he's looking for engineer. And engineers are like sick of those people with the ideas because they just get bombarded with those ideas. Can you build this for me? We'll split the equity and then we'll be successful. So we went through like a lot of conversations with people, and we tried really hard to understand who's gonna be a good match and who is a real deal and who is full of shit. So I think the what clicked with Frank is when he sent the screenshots of pre-orders. Because I think that YC also talks about that the best way to validate your idea is when the person he doesn't say that, oh, it's a good idea, I like it, maybe I'll buy it. That's not a good way to validate your idea. The best validation is when the customer pulls out the credit card and pays for your product.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, and when we didn't build anything, and when Frank sends screenshots that all people are paying money, like we have never seen that before. So that was the what clicked. And
yeah, exactly. And we went from building fully finished software and being maybe a bit scared or insecure of selling it, to not having any software at all and having a pre-order.
Yes.
That was like a positive slap in the face. We were like flabbergasted that that's possible, and that's what really clicked with us.
But like on matchmaking platform, like you're like a hot girl on Tinder, so as an engineer.
Swipe.
Yes. So it's a challenge to find the right person.
But wait, I'm missing a few episodes because he brought you some paying customers. But how, before that, so you sent the message, you intro him, you interview Frank in some way or form. What did you do to convince them, just even before paying customers, that you were the right fit? I think
the best way probably to practically speaking, what happens is because it's very hard to see. I bombarded them with hundreds and hundreds of messages on market validation and validation generally. So we had this sort of LinkedIn group between the for the three of us, where every day I would just send them, I don't know, God knows how many messages, 100 messages on things like that, just to validate the market.
Was it people you were talking to, or
people that I was talking to? So all those interviews and all those interviews and how did these pre-orders happen and a bunch of other things and how we have to build this, why we have to build so much.
But you started on your own, basically doing all this even before convincing them.
Yeah, because we met. Just when I got into YC, then I flew over to Berlin to go through this accelerator called Antler for a few 3 months. This is where I needed sort of essentially headspace to really focus on this for a bit, because I do have a missus and 2 kids, and I really needed my own time, because you're doing this at home. It's not going to work out most of the time. So you really need to go somewhere and be amongst essentially other startup wannabes, and all of you trying to make it and trying to build, trying to validate ideas, etc. And going through the accelerator, I think, is a fantastic way to do this, especially being as a first-time founder, right? So, so while I was in Berlin doing the thing, I was sending a bunch of messages every single day on what's happening on a daily basis, why we need to do things in a particular way, and it gave them time to digest again and marinate, essentially.
A few minutes.
No, it was essentially 2-3 months essentially marinate on the idea whether working with this guy Frank is something you want to do to yourself, because as you can imagine, everybody has sort of its own sort of personality, and I was the personality that would just bomb you with messages and would push you forward. Like, can you imagine working with me for many years on an ongoing basis? Because a lot of people can't imagine working with me, and that's fine, So and some people need calmer folks, and I'm not that type of calm individual, and I will always keep messaging you. I think I'm the number one guy right now in Slack that messages everybody else as well. So you have to get used to that sort of idea working with this type of co-founder that you're bringing, the third person that you're bringing into your team. And before we committed, before we said, let's build an MVP. And the way that we build an MVP essentially for our product, I sourced an agency that was willing to do it free of charge. So essentially we were co-building it together. So while they were having their full-time jobs, I was like, listen, I just sourced the agency. We're not going to pay nothing to them. We just need to do a case study for them. And so you just need to chip in and coordinate the agency, and the resource. And that's exactly what we did, So I think that was like super smart. A lot of other startup wannabes were like super surprised that I was able to source an engineering team to build an MVP, literally within a month, for free, yes, in return for a case study. So it's things like that you're like, damn, things are moving. Frank is sourcing, an agency to co-build an MVP, and then I think it's all about progress ultimately, right? So how fast are you progressing? It's also what VCs are looking at. It's not about a particular point in time. It's about how fast do you move, how fast do you build, how fast customers get on board, and many things like that.
So from his point of the way that he works is quite specific. How did you take that on board as a consideration? Were you prepared to get bombarded, as he mentions?
Yeah, I think this is what also was very beneficial from his side. Like that, this is what also clicked with us, that he's just pushing, not like I have this idea, let's build it, and that's it. Like he was like on the daily basis messaging us. And before we met Frank, we were already accepted in the Startup Wise Guys Accelerator program, and we were already matched with the founder. But he was a bit on the technical side. So at that point, after meeting Frank, we had to make a decision: do we stay in that accelerator program, or do we go with Frank? And we were thinking, we don't need another technical founder. we already have. But this is what people do. Like they try to find someone who they can relate to.
Sure.
And this is where they make a mistake, because they need to find the opposite of them to make it work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
So what changed everything? What was the first big win where you felt we're onto something big?
Good question. I don't think there was like one big win. I think there were micro wins. And I mean, the micro wins are, the fact that, you have people paying before we shipped a single line of code. then naturally, when we did 40 interviews, these are also micro wins. You're validating your idea. So I don't think there was this one big win, but once you ship the software, so we went live with V1, sort of V1. It was not really a V1, but we went live in June 2023 with V 0.8 or something. We literally didn't have a lot of still features within the software, and we still launched and we sold. We had first subscriptions coming in. The first one came from a customer in the US that we sourced from Slack. So I was essentially doing things that don't scale, essentially trying to acquire the first customers in a multitude of different ways. And we onboarded the customer, with specific feature set that we said we have. We did have that in the backend, but not in the front end of the software, essentially. So you were not able to see these features, but we had them, and Daniel was telling me it's going to take 2 weeks. I was like, well, we're not going to wait 2 weeks to onboard this customer. So we onboarded as soon as we could. And essentially at exactly the moment when we had to take the payment from the customer, we incorporated. So
Nice.
it was kind of timely planned, and but yeah, I don't think there was this one major thing that really sort of happened. It's about these micro conversions that essentially compound, right? And it gives you more and more conviction. And if you're doing this literally on a daily basis, when I say daily basis, you literally do it Monday to Sunday. So we would work literally every day. And the more you work on this, I think the more conviction you get, and the more you're exposing your piece of tech to a bunch of customers, the more they get excited, etc. Right? The more they want to talk to you.
Sure.
And so yeah, I don't think for some startups, they definitely have this one moment and everything kicks off. For us, we just had a lot of micro conversions, micro wins, essentially, that gave us that new motivation to keep on going.
But you two were still in a job, but for how long? And what was that moment when you thought, okay, I'm all in on this, quit the job, just all forward.
Yeah,
March.
I think so as Daniel mentioned, we were like building software like for a couple of years without any customers. So we were really cautious on leaving our full-time jobs. But the moment we got our like first subscriptions rolling in, we decided just like that's it. We need to hop on this full time. So I think that like the paying customers and the customers that not made the pre-orders but actually are using our software.
But so from an engineering perspective, and I see some of the challenges that Frank just mentioned, what was the hardest technical challenge in the first few months?
Yeah, so definitely scheduling. Like nobody really thinks about that, but that's really complicated. Where you have like multiple sequences across multiple time zones with certain schedules, and you also have mailboxes that can send only 30 per day, and you need to balance it across like globally. If you have like a sequence in Los Angeles and then Vilnius, that's definitely quite complicated. And the first version was not really good. The second also, but the third one was like really solid. So it was like constantly also being backward compatible, where we also had clients onboarded very, very early, where not all of the software would work. As Frank mentioned, you would go into certain pages and it would literally say coming soon, while mailboxes would be warming up for 2 weeks. We would be releasing that feature like after 1 week. We would be testing internally, and then after the second week, as if nothing happened, like the page just goes live. And that's also like lean way of how we build.
But from the also technical challenges, building complex software with 2 people, it's very complicated, especially like initial.
Coordinate, you mean?
No, just like from the development resource, initial idea by Frank was to consolidate sales tools into one. And this means that you need to build multiple sales tools into one platform. But each of those tools and each of those companies have like hundreds of engineers that are working on this, and we're only two of us. So,
beauty of startups.
Yeah, so
I did say we have to think 10x, many times.
There you go.
Yeah, so Daniel is a backend engineer, I am front-end engineer and product designer. So we are kind of like full stack. We can ship any software, but just the amount of work there, it was insane.
Yeah, exactly. Like we had those weekly meetings with Frank, and back then it was 3 of us. Now, of course, like 20 and like 40 people in the company. It's way different. But the rhetoric of Frank didn't change. He still was like, we need to go 10x. Like we need to find a way. Even though other companies, competitors, they have big software engineering teams, so we always need to be smarter. How do we attract with the resources that we have? Like what do we ship that's very different to them? And eventually like win the competition.
You find ways around the problem.
Yeah.
But so coming back to, building one software and having all these different products in that one software is quite complex, you said. So the multi-product strategy that you was that born out of that issue, or was that always the strategy to do these multi-product suite in a way?
So again, this is about having sort of unique positioning in the market and unique value prop. So when we look at the market today, there are some essentially contenders to become what's called the super app. Essentially, this is a super app contender, but essentially like you mentioned. So essentially, you want to cram as many features as possible into one app, and then users will be buying a bunch of these sort of features as an add-on. And then as we progressed, into the year, we understood that actually that's not, you're not going to have a unique piece of software or unique value prop. And then we thought to ourselves, actually, we don't want to do that. And that's actually stemmed from the first problem, which is actually there's a bunch of UX and UI problems with that. So most of our customers are unsavvy. These are sales reps, right, that are using the software on a daily basis. But then if you think about it, if you're going to cram all these features into one piece of software, then maybe only 20% of those features would be actually used on a daily basis.
Overbloated.
So yes, so then you're bloating and you become essentially like Salesforce or some other software, just too much in it. And from a product standpoint, you're thinking like, it's a great experience, they can access anything. But actually, when you're a typical user and you're just going to be using only particular bits within the software. So if that's the case, then actually from our perspective, the best way to go about this sort of thing where you still need to solve these different pains is to decouple from the main software and build modularly. So we think typically about this, the way that companies like Microsoft do this. For example, you have an Excel, you have a PowerPoint, or Apple, you have the MacBook for this problem, you have an iPhone for this problem. So essentially, if there's a particular pain that can be decoupled, you definitely want to decouple it essentially. And apart from having sort of better UX and UI, you're also able to monetize that particular module in a very different way. So you can have a different also go-to-market strategy for different products. So essentially, we were able to also improve monetization significantly by decoupling rather than keeping that specific module within the core software within Salesforge. So yeah, today we have 6 products already that we've shipped in less than 2 years, and we want to get to about 10 products altogether. But yeah, as of pretty much last week, we have about what we call ecosystem built out, ecosystem V1, which essentially has X number of forges essentially that are fully integrated, and you have this sort of Apple experience, essentially that ease of use experience. So we also do things like having a Forge ID where you can log into different softwares, all of them talk to each other, etc. So it was also about that. And then we also thought about it, from monetization standpoint, where we definitely leverage what we call land and expand strategy, right? So we have a goal to land that particular business on one product, so on one Forge. And then naturally we can upsell. We have consumption-based pricing. We can, if they like what they're seeing or if they like the results, then they keep on buying more and more and more. But then we have this sort of horizontal expansion as well, right? So we want that particular user to be buying product 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is called the software compound model. So if you just put that into Google, you can see that. And there's a company called Rippling that talks about it very heavily in the HR and the finance space. So we're literally taking the ideas from the category and we're sort of trying to replicate. Also, HubSpot, by the way, does this. So HubSpot has these different hubs. Yes, and when they do their reporting, on a quarterly or annual basis, they typically talk about, how much does this hub make, how much does this hub make, and so on and so forth. We're going to do exactly that.
Still under one kind of brand for HubSpot, for example.
Yeah, but that's a different way. So, but as I said, we don't want to do what everybody else is doing. We want to do things differently. in a way that you have a unique positioning in the market. Because otherwise what happens is, let's say we have a brand that's looking to get different pieces of tech, so they can go either with a super app concept, or they can go with let's go the Lego concept. The Lego concept, where you can sort of stitch different forges together and you can decouple them at any time, etc. Our take is that is far superior for any business out there. Coupling and uncoupling essentially, then tying yourself into different sort of hubs or whatever modules under one super app. I don't know. What's your take, guys?
But yeah, actually, I'll take the engineering or technical side of how do you decide when to spin off a new product or versus making it a feature? I guess it's like interface and all that.
Yeah, I think it's if it's big enough of a value proposition or big enough of a new feature or functionality, then you do it as a separate product. And also from the business perspective, some of our forges you can use with our competitors as well. So from the business standpoint, it's also beneficial to us, and for the user, it's also he pays less. Like for instead of if he would pay for the whole ecosystem, now he can decouple and only use the software with our competitor, for example. So if you're building something that integrates in a particular way with your competition, then you can also decouple from the core product.
From a technical standpoint, it must be quite a struggle to keep everything scalable while moving so fast.
Yes, exactly. But the most important thing we do is actually that decoupling of products, where there is different resources on each product. They're completely independent. So if like something would happen to one service, it doesn't affect any other service whatsoever. And that's how we always think about new products. And technically, they're always also independently scalable. And the databases can be different and such things, but we implement a lot of best practices. We have a lot of very experienced engineers on the team. So simple answer is follow best practices. A more complicated answer is actually what are those practices. So there is like automated deployments, code reviews, automated tests, CI/CD pipeline, and a lot of other things that we implement. And we have quite extensive documentation of the services as well, because we have engineers owning products, also owning features. So if they go, for example, on vacation, there has to be documentation where somebody can come in, understand the project, and contribute. It's a challenge, but we try to follow the best practices, and so far it's working well.
All right, I want to move. So this is all that went right, and it's evolving and all that. But what did you get wrong ultimately? If you could go back to the early days, what's one assumption you had about the market that turned out to be totally wrong?
So I think we mentioned this already, but we're thinking to build everything into one app. So we're thinking to go down the super app concept path. But then as we progressed, we decided to do it modular. I think that is the something that could have been a failure if we would go down this path, but actually we had a major success going down the path of the modular approach. And yeah, we are the fastest growing software in our category right now. In the first 12 months of being in business, so it is definitely going really well. I'm not sure. I think definitely we had a lot of let's call it mistakes. I think typically mistakes, if they do happen, a lot of mistakes, it's on the people front actually. So we did hire a lot of people, different types of people. We had to let a lot of people go, but that's quite normal actually in any startup, because you need to move. You don't just. I will say to a person interview, hey, listen, we're not a government body. We're not a corporate. We're not a typical startup. We're what they call top 1% startup that has to move super fast, like the Silicon Valley companies. And a lot of people in Europe just don't get it. And it's fine. And then what we'll do is we'll onboard a person, as quickly as possible, right? And we operate what we call an 80-20 basis, where if we have the 80% of conviction and then this could be a good individual for the business, let's onboard them, right? Because there's no point tinkering. It's about moving fast, making decisions fast, etc. And the person goes through this sort of test drive, essentially of probation period of sort of 3 months, sometimes 4 months. Of probation period, and by default, what we do is we don't let the individual pass probation period. We build conviction around that individual. So we have four people in the leadership team. So there's 3 founders and another person. essentially make a decision whether we all have to agree that this person passed probation and they're really accretive to the business. And that's the conviction that we build essentially over time. But essentially, what naturally happens, we've made a bunch of mistakes, and typically the mistakes, most of them that we made, it would be actually on the people front. But it's normal, right? So it's about how do you minimize making these mistakes. We learn naturally from the hires, and we didn't adjust. I think Daniel has definitely adjusted his approach quite heavily. I adjusted just a bit. I'm not sure about you. But yeah, we have definitely adjusted our hiring process as we progressed, but we still hire super fast. So let's say in January, we onboarded like 8 people, which is a lot. And every month we're just onboarding individuals, but we definitely know that not everybody will be sticking around, but it's fine because you're trying to assemble the what we call the team where everybody adds humongous amount of value. And then you have exceptional individuals in the team, not just individual, but like they're really making the whole team much, much better as well. That's super important.
Okay. And from the, technical front, what's a feature or product idea that you were convinced would work, but it flopped?
I have at least one.
Yeah, at least one.
The Mailforge white label.
Yeah, Mailforge white label. I think we had like some features and maybe some products with Daniel that we were building before that we were quite sure that it should work because there are so many players in the market and it's working for them. Like, why it shouldn't work for us, But the mistake that we already discussed is that we lacked sales and marketing. So maybe for those reasons, like it didn't work. Same with the features. Like you always need to talk with your customers and try to validate them before you build them. So some of the features we were moving so fast that we tried to maybe guess, what's gonna be next big thing for our customers. To avoid those mistakes, you always need to validate before build.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I have one thing just want to add, which is sort of it's not a mistake really, but we haven't prioritized that quickly enough. And that's actually integrations with other softwares. So if you look at all the research in the market, how customers make decisions on which software to buy, which not, they look actually, does it actually integrate with my stack?
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So and yes, there's the typical candidates like, let's integrate with Salesforce, let's integrate with HubSpot, but there's also a bunch of other softwares. Like if we would integrate with those, that would significantly increase our revenue levels. And you have to integrate. So
there's another channel, like people find out about you through them.
It's like, the fact that our brand is on their integrations page is super, super powerful. Yeah. So I think we're just very busy with what we call our core product, because integrations is not what we call core, at least in our eyes. But we're going to change that actually literally as of probably next month. Where we're looking, so we have what we call, the way that we prioritize items right now in product engineering is we have these sort of two tabs in a spreadsheet. One is for the core team, what needs to be shipped, etc. But we have a second tab which we call growth items. So we have literally a team which consists of engineering and marketing, where the whole job is just to build stuff for growth. And then we're probably going to have a third tab of priorities for the month, which is just integrations. We'll be prioritizing because, without integrations, we're just not gonna get big. And we have multiple forges on all of them need to be integrated with different pieces of software in the ecosystem.
Oh, wow. Okay. That sounds fun for you.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking like technically as well, there was this one project that I was building internally for checking deliverability, but very in depth. So it was quite a like a complex solution. But then I realized, also talking with the team, why are we building this internally? Why not have it for all of the customers? So that was a bit of a, scratch that and rebuild it for actually all customers and build it into Warmforge. So it's just lesson there. Be always careful of what you're building internally. Can it actually, service the users as well instead? It has to be a very good reason to build it internally. Just, thinking about how we can make it public and actually monetize it as well.
There's this concept in the startup world called technical debt. And what's one thing you built that you later regretted from your perspective?
I think that would be the one. We try again, like those going back to those best practices. We try to follow them, and therefore, technical debt is not really happening a lot. But Salesforce is a huge app, and it's growing a lot as a one big service. You could argue that it would be nice to split it into a lot of microservices, but you also don't want to do it from day zero because that's premature optimization. So we do it step by step. So it will be split to multiple microservices, but it's gonna happen over time.
Yeah, but if you're just building an MVP or like a first version, like don't worry about technical depth. Let other engineers which you're gonna hire worry about that because you need to move fast.
Yeah.
In the very start.
Okay. So yeah, when we talk about sales and growth engine as a topic, AI in sales is AI. Well, you mentioned this already. Is AI replacing salespeople or supercharging them? And my understanding is that Salesforge blends AI with human sales teams. What's the future? Does AI kind of replace salespeople or make them more powerful?
I think the answer is both, like ultimately, right? So if I said that we're looking to make companies leaner and meaner when it comes to top of the funnel pipeline building, that's exactly what we're doing. And so we're big believers that not just in sales, but in a bunch of other industries, we're moving into this sort of world where your sales team will be working with a lot of agentic capabilities in the form of co-pilot or autopilot, doesn't really matter, but ultimately that's exactly where we are headed. And I guess the best way to look at this is look at essentially Google ads account, where in Google ads, essentially back sort of 5 years ago or so, you could only be doing campaigns on what's called manual bidding, essentially, which means a human sets the bids, then the auction runs, and then you get some conversions from that potentially. But today, what a lot of the campaigns in Google are, you literally set your target CPA. So what's the cost per acquisition? So let's say it's $40 that I'm willing to pay, and then Google will set the bids for you. So essentially, Google uses vast amount of data essentially behind the scenes. It then applies machine learning models and tries to predict what should be the bids in order to help you to get to your target CPA. So that's exactly what we're building essentially. We're building the ability for you to have your sales team in our software and across other softwares as well, where we'll help you execute via email, via LinkedIn, via VoIP, essentially being able to call your customers, right? So whether that's outbound, and in the future also we're going to do that on inbound as well. But what's very important. So essentially, the reason why we head in this world as well, and why you can't just use AI agents or just humans, is the problem with humans is the labor cost, right? So it's massively accelerating. There's inflation, and we all know how expensive salespeople are in tech as well. And actually, there's what's called this CAC pressure. So cost of acquisition, essentially. So essentially, acquiring net new dollars is becoming more and more expensive. And there's a lot of data that shows out there that doesn't matter in which category you are, it's just becoming more and more expensive to be acquiring net new dollars. And that's because there's more competition and a bunch of other factors in play. So if that's the case, we have to figure out a way how to reduce CAC. And one of the coolest ways to do that is let's use an AI agent which can work 24/7 and which costs 10x less than labor, etc. Right? But there's also naturally a bunch of downsides with the agentic capabilities because still the technology is still sort of in its infancy, right? There's a lot to be done there. A lot of people say, I really hate these AI emails and stuff like that. But because tech only exists for about like a year or two. It's like really, really new and fresh from the oven, right? So. And then you have to. It's not just about also then the LLMs, and it's also about how you orchestrate this whole thing, right? So orchestration is the biggest essentially problem. But yeah, we are already at a place where anything that has to do with AIs and with the AIs sort of in terms of text is becoming really, really solid. Voice capabilities have massively improved last year. Essentially on the voice front. Somebody can call you up. Let's say you sign up to a piece of software, you provide your telephone number, and somebody will call you literally within a 2-minute SLA and will call you, and you will not really realize whether that's a human or not. That's how good the voice tech is. And I think this year we're going to be at a place where even the video tech will be really good. Essentially, I will scan you, essentially your voice, your face, and everything essentially about you, and I'll make you do and say things on the camera, whatever I want you to do. And these are essentially what I would describe sales deepfakes, right? So we're getting into this world where even video is so good, it's indistinguishable from real humans. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. Well, for us, we will be always using text and voice and video in to essentially help to augment the existing teams. But let's talk about the downsides of these agentic capabilities as well, right? So AI agents are fantastic, let's say, when it comes to using, let's say, for the text part. So for example, and voice part. So for example, sending an email, which is uniquely crafted in any language to that recipient. Then also maybe potentially sending a message also on LinkedIn, which again is uniquely crafted. And the AI agent can do that, and the human actually can do that, but the AI agents can do that fantastically. But there's also limitations on the agent front. So for example, in the US, agents are banned under the directive of robocalling, essentially. So any form of automation, outbound automation, that's illegal in the US.
For calling.
For calling, yeah, as an example. So I don't know whether that will change or etc.
In B2B or B2C or?
No, that's just
B2C,
any form of
right?
outbound. So that essentially, if you're calling out of the blue another person, that's illegal essentially. So you need to have what's called an opt-in. So that means so typically if a person has signed up to your software or to your service, ticks that TNCs box, then yes, you are allowed to call. Now again, that may change. I don't think so. So this is just one example, but I think a lot of the countries and regions in the world have not catched up to regulation on the agentic front. So I assume that at any moment, I don't know, UK, US, whatever, may decide that it's time to curb down a lot of these sort of what's called automations, whether these are agentic or whatever. So regulations are definitely still haven't catched up. So we're gonna see how this will evolve over time. But this is why we're believers that you need to do what's called the best of both. So humans plus AI agents to maximize essentially pipeline coverage and to minimize the cost per unit, which is typically meeting booked as a typical KPI that we're looking at.
Okay, but I want the view of a tech person on this. There's a big debate about AI versus sales intuition, like intuition in sales, basically. Where's the balance?
Yeah, so I think at this point, for now, all the AI solutions are co-pilots, and I think that's going to be that way for at least few years. So, for example, ChatGPT helps you; it doesn't replace you. Same with engineering. Like there is a GitHub Copilot; it helps you code. There is Cursor, but you are working with the AI Copilot together. And in our space, we have a lot of competitors who are trying to replace humans fully. Like they are developing those agents who are doing like everything. But I think it's not there yet.
No,
it's
not there.
Yeah, the tech is not there yet. That's why we are focusing on augmenting sales teams. We are focusing on building a co-pilot for you, just like ChatGPT or similar tools.
Do you have an idea of when that transition is going to happen?
Depends, like with the pace that AI is evolving, I think it might happen quite soon, but I think for like few years we're still safe.
Few years, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But what's the hardest part about building AI tools for sales teams, Daniel?
Yeah, it's about making it not to sound robotic, making it sound like a human. It's a huge challenge. So we need to always experiment with different models, do a lot of prompt engineering. We have a huge prompt engineering layer on top of just LLM and Salesforge, and just trial and error. So we're using our own product always. So we're looking at the emails, so we see how they sound, and we always evolve.
We're going to talk now as a segue to scaling sales and what's the biggest outbound mistake in your view, Frank. You're mentioning that Salesforge, helps teams 10x their pipeline. What's the biggest outbound mistake you see founders making, specifically founders?
Is not having enough. I think two things. One is not doing what's called founder-led sales. So being not out there in the market, helping your team succeed, etc. So let's say if our ICP is on LinkedIn, that means one of the founders at least has to be on LinkedIn and has to be talking about the journey and building in public and all that stuff and kind of hyping up the crowd. And yada yada yada. So I call that edutainment, making sure that you're educating the crowd on how to build a top class business, but also you're entertaining them along the way. So a lot of the things that I do, or the way that I do them in a video, for example, talking about our office move and stuff like that, you have to pump up the crowd, right? So founder-led sales is definitely always a thing, and you can look at different companies, whether that's OpenAI, right? So Sam Altman, he's also doing founder-led sales, and he's always on X and talking about it and blah blah blah. So it's the similar thing that
B2B.
Yeah, RB2B is another one. Adam Robinson, if somebody wants to check out LinkedIn, he's doing a fantastic job. Most of his leads, I think like 90+% come from LinkedIn. So you can just literally invest all your time in LinkedIn and just focus on content strategy. So we're going to be focusing, for example, heavily on that. As an example that we're looking for right now for an in-house head of brand, essentially. So somebody who's going to be on LinkedIn every single day alongside me, so things like that. You definitely know. So if your ICP is in that channel, you definitely need to contribute, right? And don't expect anybody in the team. Doesn't matter your co-founders or anybody else doing that. Somebody has to be paid for that. What's that?
Why not?
I think you need to be good at this, right? And because the main strength of Daniel and Dovydas lies in another area, right? So it's definitely positioned up LinkedIn.
Genius.
What's that?
The zone of genius is elsewhere.
Yes, I mean they can talk about things like about maybe hiring, building a better product, etc. But there's also other things that need to be done, and the frequency, because you need to be doing this on a daily basis. And if you're doing this on a daily basis, it sucks a lot of your time, right? So. And the guys have to be doing other things, but essentially you definitely want to be having multiple people on LinkedIn. So that's typically your sales team, your growth team, customer success team. Essentially anybody that's in go-to-market, these people should be definitely doing that.
Client facing.
But you can't be really expecting the product engineering team to be doing that heavily. They're more of an assist and like super rarely. So founder-led, definitely one big, super huge mistake. And I don't know. I think most companies that I see, I never see them anywhere publicly at the frequency of like once a day or even once a week. So that's mistake one. Mistake two is the activity levels, what I would call. So in sales, you look at what's called activity levels. So how many emails we're sending, how many calls are we making, how many, what's our activity on LinkedIn, essentially a bunch of different platforms. And if you don't have X activity levels, you're never going to hit your pipeline targets. And nobody thinks from a standpoint of activity. What is our activity on a weekly, daily basis? And how comfortable do we feel about hitting our targets? So for example, our rep that does cold calling, because we can't use AI agents, so is doing 200 dials a day. So then you have to think to yourself, is your whole company even doing $200 a day? If not, why not? And some people say, oh, well, the cold calling channel is dead. No, it's not dead. I mean, we use all channels. We use email, we use LinkedIn, and we use, calling on Outbound, right? The only thing that we don't do yet, because we just don't have time for it, we have not activated yet voice agents on inbound. So because voice agents on inbound are allowed, and there's a lot of cool tech for that. And we're definitely super aggressive across inbound and outbound. But yeah, on outbound, typically you don't see the necessary activity levels, and you don't see people doing all these three core channels trying to reach out to the customers, because you definitely should be doing multi-channel in order to be maximizing the conversion rate, essentially, right? Because the problem is like, oh yeah, we send a few emails, Frank, but some of the prospects, the mailbox is like bomb. They get like 100 emails a day. So that means the likelihood is that it's way too saturated, that particular channel. But some people are more responsive on LinkedIn. Which is why you should be engaging on LinkedIn. Some people are more responsive. You just need to call them. And I literally have this one guy in New York. He says, Frank, I don't do any meetings. I don't want to talk about this on email. Call me. And I called him. I literally use Skype, and I know Skype is being deprecated.
Finished.
And I'm using Skype just for one-off calls, still. And so I literally in Skype just type in his number and I'm calling him. Hey, John, how's it going? And we talked about the tech and what it does. Had a few questions, and that's it. Off he went sort of paid for it.
I mean, there's no better way to scare the shit out of a technical founder to tell him that you need to go and do all these channels. And he's like, what? I had that same conversation yesterday with one of my clients.
I mean, if you're not good at this, find who's good at this, right? So there's three options, I believe, how you can, acquire pipeline these days. A, you hire people, right? But you need to train them, or somebody needs to train them to be good.
Needs to train
Otherwise, if you don't have anybody who's going to train them, forget about it. There is another type of person that you can hire in sales, which is called a founding account exec. And these are people that have been in sales for a long time, but they're gonna start with this company literally from day zero, and then we'll try and figure out all the processes and everything. So I have that account exec in my team. I could call her literally founding account exec, because she's trying to figure out the process, the automation. It's her job. I'm not doing anything. Then the other option is like hiring an agency or consultant to help you, right? Because they have wealth of knowledge, because they've worked with a bunch of companies out there. So, people like you, for example. And then the third option is like, okay, this option doesn't work for me. This option doesn't work for me. Hey, let me try this, fully autonomous sort of AI, SDR, whatever capability. So that's the third option. Now, I'm also
kind of, I guess one of the questions that a lot of people would have is like those agents that like Agent Frank, wouldn't it run into the problem of going so fast and outreach so many people that it would kind of burn your TAM to a certain extent?
No, we put certain railguards in place. We could talk, a whole hour about it.
Yeah,
but we have
sure.
certain railguards like eval and a bunch of other things. So we check every email. We focus heavily on deliverability. We have a customer success manager on every Agent Frank relationship with our customers, mutual Slack channels, a bunch of other things to make sure we're driving the success. But just kind of to finish off here, essentially, there's also no reason why you wouldn't hire a person, why you wouldn't get an agency or consultant, maybe multiple even, and then even get an AI agent. Like if your TAM is big enough, arguably you should do all three.
Yeah.
So for example, we literally do all three things right now. We have from an acquisition standpoint, naturally we have 3 people in sales. We have some agencies working to improve acquisition. So for example, a content agency / SEO agency or backlinks agencies. We're looking for more agencies that can help us. And then we also naturally use our own agents to acquire more pipeline. And I think you should be doing all these 3 things to maximize automating pipeline coverage for your business.
I totally agree. And Dovydas, actually, I wanted to ask you about how do you make sure your product helps sales teams focus on a real pipeline rather than just noise?
Yeah, so we try to build our product we're building our product very closely with our customers. So we always try to listen to them for the feedback. And from the technical standpoint, if you get a lot of responses, they can be a noise. So from the technical standpoint, like we have advanced filtering capabilities to filter out all the positive replies. For example, we have labeling functionalities powered by AI as well, so you don't need to label manually, and a bunch of other features that help you focus on the real deals rather than just some noise that are coming to your way. And of course, if we are talking about AI agents that we have, we also have very good targeting system to find your TAM, to who you want to reach out. And because if you're trying to reach out just some random people, it's just not going to work for you. So we're trying to build software just to get the best possible results for you.
So talking about, and you mentioned this earlier about not making it feel robotic or trying at least to alleviate that in some way or form. Is there do you have a few things that you can share of how you do that?
So the prompt engineering that we do and basically trial and error of the emails, we constantly keep an eye on, how emails look like for our customers. And also being a customer of our own software, we also look at our emails, like how do they sound and what kind of response do they trigger as well. And then we experiment with different models weekly and try to just, adjust it and making sure that it's better and better, what is indistinguishable.
On our website, actually, there is this little widget where it says Experience Agent Frank. So a customer just enters, some details in there. We'll get an email literally within a few seconds, which will be computed by Agent Frank. And then what we typically do is we then go on LinkedIn and ask the person, "Hey, how was the email?" And we just try and see what is the real feedback on a single email. And typically 8, 9 out of 10 people say it was really good. Hopefully that's an honest answer, but they typically say it's really good. Which is how we get feedback. We get feedback multiple different ways, but this is the first time we get a feedback. How was the email, right? And if a real human says it was really good, then job well done, I guess. But I don't believe we're gonna get to this point where 10 out of 10 we're gonna be 10 out of 10. Everybody was gonna say where it was good. And the reason is because, we sell this piece of tech to a lot of salespeople, and they already have seen a lot of AI stuff, and they're going to say, this looks a bit too AI-ish, so stuff like that. But do remember that these emails, when they do get executed, they get executed to an audience that typically does not get any form of AI emails.
Okay.
So I may get maybe one email which is AI-based a week, one email a week, AI-based, versus like 100 templated emails. What we're really fighting against out there is the world of templates, this static piece of communication where that when you look at this email, it was probably circulated to thousands of individuals out there. So we're calling the death of templates as we're progressing into the future. And the reason for that is because Google really penalizes all those templated emails, those unsolicited emails, where it just looks at, okay, if from this particular domain or mailbox we've been receiving a lot of spam reports from our user base, then Google analyze the content within the email, that static content. And when it's static, meaning a templated content, you'll be essentially penalized and you'll be landing more in spam because of that static piece of message. So we believe that the world of generally outbound communication will be more programmatic, not just in B2B, but also B2C, etc. Because delivering, the best possible message to the recipient should drive more response, whether they're buying more, responding more, etc. And we're just trying to do, a really good job in the world of B2B and in the world of sales. But, we've seen also a bunch of cool other solutions in the world of B2C.
Yeah, because ultimately you're trying through increasing your deliverability to make each email that you send as unique as possible, because if they're templated, like you say, that actually hurts your deliverability ultimately. And now Microsoft and Google are really cracking down on that.
Yeah, because Google uses Gemini to associate essentially spam reports with the content, right? So it's doing a really good job there. And yes, I mean, Google, I don't think anybody wants to receive really crappy emails. I want to know, if somebody sends me a cold email, I want to know why this is for me. So which pain is it solving for me? What you can do for me. And I do look through a lot of emails. So for example, recently there was this one guy, his name is Gottfried. He literally was, just applying for a job that didn't exist on our site. We don't have a careers page. He's like, Frank, listen, your community isn't that strong. Like, you need a bit more activity in there. And I've been doing this for a very, very long time. And I believe I have a really few cool ideas on how can I shake this up and etc. So that's it. I spoke to Gottfried for over a 30-minute call. It's like, yeah, off you go. And that's it. He was hired, and there he is. We hired him last week. And now he's our community manager, right? So because he really identified the pain that we have as a business, he had a solution for that pain, and he got the clear CTA. Let's have a chat about it, etc. So it was it's super obvious. But a lot of emails out there, these templated emails that you get, they don't anchor in any pain whatsoever. Like, I don't know whether I have a pain. Did you check out my site? Did you check out my community? Did you check out anything whether I have a pain? So I have this good friend from Australia that always says, listen, no pain, no gain, no demo train. So always lead with the pain. And people always ask me, Frank, what's the best email? What's the best email that you can send? I was like, how about you send that first initial email that you do send? How about you just anchor on the pain and nothing else? Just don't even talk about your solution. Just try and validate whether your prospect has that pain in the first place or not. And maybe in the second email, in the follow-up email, you do talk about your solution, but try and really amplify the pain as much as you can for your prospect.
Yeah, because ultimately you want it to be relevant, right? And timely. Yes. You need to see if they have that pain at that moment.
Yes.
So it makes total sense. But I want to go a little bit into the what we call the oh shit moments in some respects. You've been at it for 18 months, a bit 20 more, 20 something months. You are going at freight train speeds, or maybe even high speed train speeds. Could you, what almost broke you? Describe maybe a moment when everything almost fell apart. What happened? How did you push through? Burn out? I don't know. Is it humanly possible to go this fast, this long?
Yeah, I think the lowest point was so when we quit our jobs, actually.
Oh, okay. It's like, oh boy.
Yes.
Where's my rent?
Exactly. So yeah, we shipped the initial version and we got our first subscriptions, and subscriptions were going up, and we're like, oh, that's cool. Like, let's quit our jobs and let's do it full time. We have some savings and we can, at least for a year we can survive. But but few months passed, and due to product being not that good, because we're only two of us only starting to build this, and people started churning, and they started canceling their subscriptions. And even though Frank is selling, but lots of people are leaving due to lack of features, lack of integrations, and other features. And when you start seeing churn, it like really hits you, like oh shit, like we are going down, right? not up anymore. And you don't have salary, you don't have income, you need to pay for rent, for food, and all of that. And yeah, so
It's no turning back.
yeah, it's no turning back. It's really tough. So we were at that point, I think 6 months, we were renting a co-working space. Before, we used to work in the coffee shops and some shopping malls. But yeah, we were renting a co-working space, and we had to pause our co-working space because we didn't have any money to pay for it. So I think that was the lowest point. But like a couple of months after, we shipped a new Forge, and it really hit a PMF, and it took off. So
Which one was it?
MailForge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the lowest point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was like December 2023.
Yeah.
Probably. I had 30 euros in my bank account at that point.
And the mortgage.
And the
And a
mortgage.
loan. How about loan?
Yeah,
From your relatives as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I borrowed money from my grandma as well. I couldn't just, keep borrowing. And it was a hard moment because, December is Christmas time, so you need to also shop for gifts and stuff like that. So yeah, it was tough.
Societal pressure.
Yeah, exactly. But my wife Gerda was really supportive of me. She was like, "Don't quit. We can live on her salary basically." So yeah, I had this support, thankfully, and we were building MailForge. So all of the motivation and all of the burnout, we just parked it and created MailForge, and that took off at that point.
How important is it to have supportive people around you when you're building something like this?
It's really important because it's hard enough. It's really hard. So if you also don't have a supportive environment, that just makes it 10x harder. So you better have people that are on board.
Unless you're Frank.
Unless you're Frank.
Frank doesn't need any support. He just
Internal compass.
Out of all of you, he's the only one that has like a family, right? Kids and whatnot, right? You still are quite young, and so you don't have that part of it. I mean, I'm in the same basket as Frank, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, in my case, I have a missus, right? She's working, but we also have 2 kids, right? So, and I was out of work essentially for over a year. Essentially no money, my beautiful sales commission was not there anymore. And I was burning through cash in my bank account a fair bit. Yeah, there's definitely, everybody has pressure, right? So, because you're burning through savings, but you believe in this, right? That there's something here. That's not, that's why we, didn't quit. But yeah, it was tough. And yeah, I was the first guy that got salary. Because naturally, while they had their full-time jobs, I didn't have a full-time job, nothing like that. I wasn't doing no consulting, literally no, $0. Because I just don't do consulting. I always believe I can help you out on XYZ things, but then if you want to help me, you want to pay me back, just buy my software. Yeah, buy my software. Yeah. And that's it. I think that's how it should be.
Without a discount.
Yeah, without a discount, exactly. Yeah, right. If you're really supporting your friends or people that you believe in, you buy without a discount.
Absolutely.
Unless you're one of those people where we said, hey, before we even have a software, here's a really good deal. That was the best discount that you ever had, really, for the Forge. But it was really tough. And my missus, back then when I said, hey, listen, I'm going to start my own startup, she said, are you crazy? You're giving up on a 200K plus OTE package with stock options, commission, you name it, a lot of stuff. And then you just want to earn nothing.
I just want to do what makes me happy.
Yes, I want to be not comfortable, meaning making no money and trying to make it. I'm that sort of person. Because I do get bored essentially if you're way too comfortable, and I'm always looking for the next thing. I think it's also with us, in building all the forges that we have. We're comfortable with all the forges. Let's build another one. But yeah, right now I think we're in a place where we have these six products that we have. Where we want to kind of skyrocket all this sort of ecosystem. We want to go to market with what we call the ecosystem approach, like the Apple kind of approach, right? Where we have these different forges. and sell this and go to the moon and raise Series A, whatever we need to raise as well. Even though we are profitable as a business, we still believe that this is a $1 billion business. We're going to make it far. Yes, there are going to be tough moments. I think we have tough moments even now, even with 40 people team. But yeah, even though kind of on the headcount kind of topic, like we're also being very cautious on hiring people just generally. Even though we're profitable and we have no problems of burning, but we don't want to just add more people. We want to add people that make a huge difference to the business, and people that we can call essentially. Some people call those adults versus children. We want to hire adults, but I call those autonomous humans. Humans where you're the CEO of your own turf and you could just execute, you can do stuff, and I don't need to babysit you ultimately, right? So you just come to report me, ask my advice, and that's it, right? I want to coach you, I want to mentor you, I don't want to manage you. Like we don't have any managers in the business at all. As in there's just 3 co-founders and that's it. There's no management layer, which is quite surprising. I think for most startups out there, they love to hire the head of whatever, and then they manage like the team, whatever. No, in our case, everybody reports in one of the founders. So the reason why we're kind of talking about headcount is like we're very cautious, about adding more people. And what we're doing right now, we're blending our headcount with a ton of automation. And we're using a software called N8N right now to spin up essentially a bunch of workflows. And we want to essentially ship 1,000 workflows this year to have this feeling like you work back in the days at Google where everything is automated. Literally everything is automated. So I also want to create that Google feeling also at the Forge where you come into the business and if something is broken, somebody will inform you, or something is going well, somebody will inform you, or like, essentially anything that's repetitive, we want to eliminate that. And we want to make sure that the engine is just running and you don't need to hire people to do things repetitively, right? So we have even this sort of N8N channel where people can, we cross those ideas, across everybody, across every single team. And then we have another team that just kind of ships these workflows on a weekly basis. So 10 is a minimum, 10 net new workflows is a minimum. And that will essentially what will reduce the pressure on our end to hire people.
But I want to come back, and I'm already skipping a little bit here. But when we're talking about hiring and culture that you mentioned now, what makes someone a Salesforge A player? Like, what qualities do you look for in hires now that you've been doing this for a little bit and you're in Salesforge, with the mistakes included? Would you have a definition now for it?
Well, a typical founder should say, hey, listen, I'm hiring people that are better than me. That's the people that you really want to hire. But you don't want to have this situation what we call a square peg in a round hole, right? So essentially hiring good people, but they're not really good for your business, right? So they're really good startup people, but they're not what we call top 1% startup people, right? So we had a lot of these situations where people come from sort of enterprise sales background and then join the Forge where with a lot of sort of high velocity sales business, PLG based business. So product led growth is our main way how we
acquire customers.
Them? That's still the case, yes.
But you still hired those enterprise people? Because
we try not to.
I wouldn't.
I mean, I came from enterprise sales. I was able to morph, but most people cannot morph from enterprise sales into high velocity sales. It's just different game altogether.
Yeah, and I think you have like a really nice method to evaluate based on 4 pillars. You have like evaluate people.
Yeah. So so we have these, when a person is actually in the team, like we do look at from the candidate from what we call 4 pillars. They're very straightforward and we value them based on the traffic light system. But the pillar 1 is what we call performance pillar. It's literally just hitting your KPIs, right? Are you able to hit your KPIs? Everybody has KPIs. Engineers have KPIs on a monthly basis. Are we able to hit them? And that's it. That's pillar 1. Pillar 2 is what we call competence pillar. So we're definitely looking for people that are hungry for professional development, right? So they have X number of competence, and then the reason why they're joining us is because this is a bullet train. It stops, we pick you up, and then off we go. Are you able to handle the speed? Are you able to improve your competence literally on a daily/weekly basis? Where you can say after a month you're a totally different human being, right? Because you're ramping your competence like super fast due to number of interactions, how the velocity of business is stuff like that, right? So competence is very important, right? So you're not the same person essentially after a month. Because you have to be growing with the business, right? So then number 3 is commitment. How committed you are to yourself. If you say you're gonna get something done today, you actually get that done today. All right, you're not letting your colleagues hanging, right? So we definitely look at the commitment as a pillar. And then number 4 is culture. So it's less of a culture fit. It was more of a culture add conversation. Like, are you adding something to the existing culture, because we want to be able to this sort of cultural melting pot, similar to companies like Google, a bunch of other ones, where essentially we have these different opinions because we lived in different places, we've done different things, we've been in different companies, and we can look at the same problem in many different ways and forms, which allows them to build the best possible product, right? And when I look at competitors and a bunch of other companies, they have typically employees from all the same country. And then they can't, let's say US, right? You hire a bunch of Americans, and then they can't relate to Europeans, for example.
No.
So you get to these problems down the line, and then you realize how important it is to be hiring from all around the world. So we have people all the way to the east from Japan, and then all the way to the west in Dominican Republic.
But so how do you balance hiring for skill versus cultural fit within Salesforge?
Yeah, so I think for a culture check, we have this nice process where we invite people for a lunch interview. And yeah, so we just like 3 founders, we have like a lunch or we go to like grab some coffee, and we just talk and see like you can call it a vibe check. If there is a vibe, if you vibe with the person, then most likely there will be a cultural fit in the team as well. Because if you vibe with the founders, most likely you will vibe with the rest of the team.
But that's for locally here. But if you do it remotely, how do you? What
we
do you
do it then via like Google Meets. Try to talk about the goals, the personal stuff. Just try to understand the person. Yeah, but it's a bit more difficult to do it via Google Meets. Yeah.
But what's one technical skill that's non-negotiable in your team?
Not sure if it's like technical, but I would say ownership, just in general.
Be accountable.
Yes, because for example, we had candidates that had 15 years of experience and even 20 years of experience, but maybe they don't really have ownership. They are used to getting tasks and having somebody else own the product and just execute on something. That's not what we were looking for.
More big company type people.
Exactly, and that's a very hard skill to find. Definitely, it's harder to find than just technical competence, those people. So just being also passionate, overall, internally driven is very important, and ownership goes hand in hand with that.
I think one success that we found is actually hiring former startup founders. It's quite a good correlation, right? So they failed with their startups, they joined our business. So you see a lot of that. You see a lot of these geeky, quirky people is actually doing very well in our business because they like to geek out about stuff, and they're like really perfection or try to perfection like a process, like best in class, really. Like these are type of people that have been abroad, traveled a lot. They're really good fit. That we find. We find that also immigrants are really good fit. Like you're an immigrant in the country that we hire you in, a really good fit, because they're not in their own turf, right? It's not like they have mom and dad there, a lot of friends, etc. So these immigrants actually are doing, they have to hustle, they have to survive, they have to be sharp at all times, and then they join Forge, and we see a lot of good kind of correlation there in terms of success. So there are these ingredients that we look at, like who is this person, what's their background, okay, they're in this country, what do you think about them, and I think we can do this still successfully up to sort of 50 employees. And then we'll probably need to hire head of people, something like that to do that.
We have this funny interview question. We ask people, why do you want to do it yourself? Why you just don't join like a normal company? Why do you want to go in a startup? And usually based on the response, you can understand if it's a culture fit or not. Like what are your motivation to join a startup?
So what type of responses do you get?
Well, usually people say that they are bored, and that's a very good response.
That's a good one.
They are bored in their current position and they want a challenge. They are challenging themselves, so that's a very good response. Sometimes they say something very generic, and then you think, he doesn't understand what's the startup culture. So based on that question, you can also evaluate people.
And I mean, you mentioned about ex-founders coming on board. So I guess the founder mindset is quite important, even in hiring. But coming back to you guys, what did you have to unlearn within this, startup world, what's the biggest mindset shift you had to make as a founder? Let's start with you, Frank. Being from sales, even head of sales, VP, and going through the motions of career move up in sales. But what mindset shift did you have to go through?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So I would say, definitely delegating stuff as much as you can is probably the biggest thing. You learn and unlearn, etc. So there's essentially a lot of that because, as I said, we do hire people that are fully autonomous, but you need to give them responsibility, right? And I still do a lot of stuff myself. Like I do still a lot of demos as the CEO of the company. On a weekly basis, I have 10 plus demos still with customers to make sure I'm close and make sure I'm passing the right feedback and make sure I'm showing the software and then getting the feedback, see how it is actually in the real life, right? But kind of, fully letting it, passing the sort of the baton over to somebody else or the whole team, that's still something that I need to do because I'm still heavily involved in the front line essentially. But then the benefit is that you're close to your customers. But yeah, definitely, you can't scale unless you give everything to the people who should be responsible. So for example, yesterday, me and Daniel had a chat about something and I said, this is not a conversation for a CEO and CTO. This is a conversation for the head of product. And you need to understand that some of the topics should not be dealt anymore by you. And I know you want to be, still in this mindset of there's just 3 of us. No, there's other 40 people in the company and they have to do it and it's their job and they're accountable for that. And all you do in Slack is you CC that person and that's it. But it's their responsibility. You just send a reminder or whatever. Because guess what? We have other thousands of things that we need to do on a daily basis. And it's something that you need to learn and unlearn as well.
It's tough, huh? Delegating, to be fair. It's a skill.
Yes.
But what's something you used to believe about startups that you now know is completely wrong?
Yeah, maybe not completely wrong, but so me and Daniel, we have a background in engineering, and like coding, but right now we have an engineering team and coding for us is complete waste of time because we have multiple people to do that. And arguably they are even better than us. So unlearning, like stopping like your work, like coding, it's very difficult because this is what you were doing for the past few years, and you need to become someone else. You need to become like a good manager, which you were never before, and you need to learn those skills. And like basically, you need to shift your career and adjust to in what stage your startup is, because at every stage of a startup you need to do different things. First you're a coder, then you're everything: a manager, coder, designer, developer, salesperson, everything. But then you need to, as your startup grows and as you start to delegate things, you need to shift your responsibilities. You need to become a manager, a leader, and all of that.
So how does building a startup product differ from working in a traditional tech company now that you've been through this?
So I'd say the biggest thing is letting go of perfectionism because in a startup you need to be very fast. You need to ship something and then iterate over and over again. In like big companies, you have time for perfection. You can perfect something and then only then release. Also for engineers, that means that, before getting a task in a big corp, it passes through head of product, product manager, business analyst, tech lead, and only then you have a really nicely, scoped tasks that you are working on. You know the requirements, you know all of the edge cases and stuff like that. In startup, you can get a task which is like, do this. And then you need to not be scared of uncertainty. You need to dive deep. You need to figure out, speak to stakeholders. So it really is the biggest difference. Basically, your toleration of uncertainty. It has to be big in startup.
Tolerance for uncertainty. So this is all great advice, and if you were talking to founders, and even if you were talking to yourself on day one, what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
we have to ship faster. Even faster than back then. So
The speed is a big determinant of success for sure. But
I mean, you just wish you would have done things faster. It's not just shipping, but also other things, right? So
is it
once you're
humanly
like
possible?
It is possible because prioritize something else or that thing, right? But yeah. Typical answer is like, I think in our case, like you wish you have done things faster, and for example, hired somehow even greater people, right? So like in our case, we thought like if we would have just these X people in the team, like last year, like we would actually scale even much faster, but we just couldn't find them. That's it. So we just didn't have them in the business. But we'd rather not have what we call the bad apples in the team and only have good apples in the team. If you can't find more good apples, then, we just grow slower essentially. But we'd rather not hire what we call the bad apples. So we definitely have a few positions that we didn't fill, even for like 6+ months. We just couldn't find the right person. It's just better not to hire. Even on the 80-20 basis, we couldn't find some shoes that we had to fill.
I mean, the reason you find them now is because they've heard about what you're doing, building, and they just want to join a rocket ship, right? And you didn't have that before. So I think you have to take into account the fact that some people are meant to come at a later stage because it's just the way it is. They find you, or like Godfrey pitches.
They're not always available, right?
Yeah,
so,
as well.
That's the
not their time.
It's not the time. Yeah, it's a timing problem. Yes,
because there's a massive mindset shift as well to join a startup, and the timing when you join it can be very different. Whether you're joining it after 18-20 months when it's been growing fast, or if it's like on the first few weeks.
Yeah, that's why we're also big believers in what we call the LinkedIn feed domination strategy. Like we want to dominate the feed, right? Keep on, educating people, entertaining them. But also at the same time, what does happen is a lot of different people just send you a message. Hey, Frank, I've seen the growth of your company. I really want to join this, and this is another reason why you should be always, super, super vocal about what you do, how you do it, and the pains that you have in your organization, stuff like that. And then, the right people will be watching you always. They may not like your post. They may not comment on your post. But if you look at the impressions,
lurkers.
Yeah, the lurkers. But you've looked at all the impressions that you're generating. Guess what? There's a lot of people out there just watching this stuff. And I meet sometimes people that I have not spoken to even for like years and years and years. And then we meet like at the bar at some conference, and they're like, Frank, I know everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I've been dominating their feed for all these years. They're just following. They're not really liking, not commenting. There's a lot of people that just don't like comments. They don't want to be
associated with the comment, or my company will see it. I don't want it.
Yeah, or whatever the reasons are. Yeah, but they're all watching. They're all consuming your content. And yeah, that's why, for example, we optimize for reach. We optimize for impressions. So there's my profile. On every post I generate, I think on average like 5,000 impressions. Multiply times 5, I'm doing that 5 times a week. That's 25,000 impressions, which is a lot. If I can then replicate that across my team, etc., it's like, if you think about, if you didn't do that, if you're just spending money in like LinkedIn, it would be like very, very costly. You basically would be spending 6 figures.
Organic works better.
Yeah, because naturally, either organic or like what's called thought leadership ads on LinkedIn, that also still works. But people want to buy from people, right? And they want to know who you are, the way you think, the way you do things, right? And that's where you sort of, keep on having these, really, like you definitely having this sort of authentic, great content on LinkedIn that people can resonate with.
Yeah. I'm not a technical founder. If I was, I wouldn't be asking you this, but what's one thing about product and engineering that non-technical founders don't understand in your view?
I think the main thing that I see very often, it's they underestimate how difficult is it to build products.
Ship faster.
Yes.
Just do it.
Yeah. Sometimes they think that they can just find some like builder online and then ship the software that they want, but it usually doesn't work that way. And it requires a lot of effort, a lot of knowledge and engineering skills to ship great products. And that is the reason why companies have hundreds of engineers working on their products. And if you are building a startup, you're a non-technical co-founder, try to find a technical co-founder.
Yeah, and adding to that as well. So one is like how difficult it is to build, but also how much time it takes to build, and it's very hard to say what's the deadline for this.
Estimation.
Yeah, exactly. Estimation. Because software engineering, there's just so many difficult moving parts that you don't know what you don't know. Basically, you dive into the problem, you find something else, then the scope expands, then this is something you didn't think about, and we can only give forecasts of, for example. But for salespeople, it's very important to know when something is going to be released because customers are asking. So we need to be
manage
as
expectations.
Yeah, we need to be as accurate as possible, but we also need to make sure that it's a forecast where we say like, in a week or, by the end of month or something like that on a certain date. It's very hard to do.
Must be hard to be conservative with Frank breathing down your neck.
Every day. I only have one question, every day for them. What are we shipping
What are we
today?
shipping today?
So we're releasing every day, which is also freaks out the engineers. This is a question that you can ask, to an engineer. How do you, what do you think about the world where we're releasing every day? And then it freaks them out, and then it helps us to disqualify people quite well.
So ship it even before it's truly perfect, ready, and just see what breaks, and then you fix it.
Yeah, it goes back to the perfectionism as well. Like maybe we release a feature to a subset of customers or only to ourselves and see how it works, in live environment, and just iterating step by step.
So actually, what type of mistakes do you see like junior engineers make in startups?
I think for a junior engineer, I would advise against working remotely. That's very important for a junior engineer. Like, I think coming into office and working with your seniors, being next to them, asking questions, see how they speak, see how they exactly speak, see how they speak, and just hang out with them. I remember, like with my seniors, I used to bring them coffee when they, would basically see my code and give me advice, because they are also, seniors, and they are, consuming their time to give me advice. Building those friendships. Sometimes when you're going to lunch, they are discussing certain things, so you just learn way more just on-site, environment. Another thing which is probably, quite new in this industry is AI. So I would be very careful with using AI for junior engineers. So it's also, not smart not to use AI. So I would recommend to just, converse it with AI to clarify any subjects, but don't let it do the work for you.
Understand the fundamentals.
Yeah,
I had high hopes for myself.
Yeah,
I'm going on Cursor and just rolling out a Salesforge too.
Well, if you want to be a software engineer, then it's different. Of course, like if you want to experiment on something like being a salesperson, that's perfect. No Cursor, but engineers really need to understand the fundamentals behind something, because LLM is just a prediction of what you want to hear, essentially. And when you will be faced with a problem where LLM cannot solve, we face those problems a lot at Salesforge, where LLM will not help you. We have even conditional tree challenges, NLP and stuff like that. So you really need to, have been through stuff to solve.
And maybe as a junior engineer, don't start a startup yet, because
yourself, you mean?
Yeah, yourself, or maybe with a co-founder, because at some point you will need to hire people very, very early on, and you will hire wrong people because you just cannot evaluate the skills. And but that doesn't mean that you don't need to build anything. Always be building, in your free time. Always be building some side projects. But try to reach that position when you are a senior, and then consider starting a proper business.
That's a great point. Definitely, joining a company where you have other senior engineers that you can learn from. Exactly. I think the biggest growth in my career was when I was actually working in companies full time in the very early start, and the slowest growth when I was actually freelancing. So in freelancing, you're in your own bubble with your ideas. You are not getting challenged. For example, you have code reviews in normal companies where you are challenged all the time, because basically when you raise a PR, any comment is essentially it doesn't go against you, but it challenges what you think and how you did things, and that's how you learn.
I can totally relate, because I think in our neck of the woods, it's the same, right? In sales and marketing, if you starting in a structure, well, you did Google, I guess. I was completely financial industry, but big structure as well. I guess it kind of gives you that foundation to build upon, at least. And I think it might be a mistake for young people to start off their careers and go in something that is not fully structured, where they don't have that support network to build them up.
Yeah, and like when you work in like some proper companies, you see an example how things are supposed to be,
Right.
and
Processes.
processes. And if you don't have that experience and you start your own thing, like the likelihood of you making mistakes is very high.
I totally agree. Yeah. Complete segue, but maybe some people would like to have a little glimpse in your tech stack when you come, even from the sales perspective or even the back, front end. What are some of the tools that, apart from Salesforge and all of that, of course, what are some of the tools that you guys are using at Salesforge?
So it's the typical stuff that you would use in any company. You should use a proper CRM. So back in the days, we were deciding between Salesforce and HubSpot. We went down the HubSpot route for this business, even though I was always a Salesforce ambassador. I still am, but for this business, it just didn't make sense. And the reason why it didn't make sense is because most of our customers use HubSpot, so we wanted to use HubSpot as well. So whatever our customers are using, we were using that as well. So if most of your customers use that piece of tech,
because they're not enterprise level.
In the early days, yes. Even though we're moving to mid-market and enterprise this year, but yeah, back in the early days, naturally it's all SMB stuff. So so HubSpot plus naturally has a bunch of integrations. Plus you can get a super cool HubSpot deal, right? They give you like whatever 75% off as well for the first few years. Kind of makes sense, right? So that's our tech stack on the HubSpot front, and naturally for all things sort of outbound email, naturally that uses Salesforge. So there's bidirectional sync, and then for LinkedIn. We've been using a few tools for LinkedIn. Like there's no like one particular tool that I think comes to mind. Now we're also going to be rolling out our own tools, our own LinkedIn automation engine.
Outreach tool.
Yes, yeah, within Salesforce.
But for your content, you do that all manually, I guess.
For content, I don't use any tools, but there are a couple tools that are out there like called Taplio or Supergrow, I believe, is another one. But there's a few tools where you can schedule posts. I don't schedule. I think the best posts come out where you actually schedule them on the same day. Sometimes I would schedule for the next day, but I don't schedule for the whole week ahead typically. Because that creativity, these moments live are now. So when there's a moment that you want to talk about, do post it immediately on LinkedIn. And sometimes you may post twice a day. So that's on the LinkedIn front. On the cold calling front, we would use a few tools, but let's say we use something like Nux or Salesfinity to do cold calling at scale. And then we use a bunch of data platforms to feed our leads. Typical stuff like Apollo or Lead Magic or a bunch of other tools that we would use to get our data enriched, etc. We would use naturally all these de-anonymization tools like RB2B, like Maximize, a bunch of other tools. But I would say, tools come and go just generally, right? Because tools evolve on a sort of yearly basis, especially in this space, So something that was trending, like a year ago, right now, it's not trending anymore. So for example, the most trending tool right now based on last year is Clay.com. So for example, we use Clay as well. So like an inbound stuff. So on inbound front, we use, for like newslettering, we use things like Beehive. We use heavily N8N for all sorts of automations. So N8N actually applies to both inbound and outbound front. We use WhatsApp heavily. We talk to our customers on WhatsApp. We get more response on WhatsApp than email, for example.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of WhatsApp.
So it's things like that. And then we use a cool tool, a couple cool tools actually on the site to talk to our customers directly. One is called Captivate, and the other one's called Face to Face.
What's the difference?
Just a few features, whatever, but we're just testing right now. It's a full-on bake-off, essentially, trying to figure out which tool is better. And the goal of that tool is just to connect with our customers in real time, right? So whenever they have a question, you can literally call us and we get a ping in Slack, and it's super powerful. And then, so definitely we're always open to our customers. So what that means is we always also have this chat bubble. We use a tool called Gleep, which is a fantastic alternative to Intercom. Super cheap. We pay for Gleep for a whole year less than we would pay to an Intercom for a whole month. That's how expensive Intercom these days is.
It is.
So I think that's the kind of the stack, and there's a bunch of other tools that we use, but it is definitely heavy, and we're definitely looking at also consolidating a lot of that. But some tools can't be just consolidated. But
note taker?
No, we don't use any note takers. Interestingly enough.
Why?
I don't take notes.
Too many. Okay, but you remember everything. Fill out your CRM properly.
Yes, typically yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Because back-to-back calls kind of stop that from happening.
Yes. I don't know. We don't use any note takers. We have a kind of process there, but I don't want to elaborate on that. But there is a process there, but yeah, it's not a note taker.
N8N is involved, I guess, in some way or form.
Yes, something happens in N8N. We have hundreds of already flows by now.
Do you think founders underestimate the amount of money to spend on tools per rep that they have in their company?
Typically, you would spend anywhere between, I would say, $300 to $600 per rep. So yes, they do typically some overinvest, some underinvest, and some people just invest about
I've seen numbers like over 1,000 per rep, 1,200 on average.
But yeah, you have this is why why we are also trying to reduce the headcount numbers, right? Because if you're also spending like say $1,000 per rep just on the stack, what if you could just have fewer people but with significantly high output levels, right? So and then that's significantly more CAC efficient. Yeah, because there is a lot of tooling. A lot of those tools are nice to have. Yeah, you could say note taker is must have, but I would say it's a nice to have in my world, right? So like things like that, it really depends. But like you need a dialer to call is a must have tool. You need a tool to send emails is a must have tool. There's definitely must have tools, and we tried
in high velocity sales though.
Yeah. So yeah, also depends. Are we in high velocity or not?
Yeah.
And are you in enterprise sales? Yeah, then the tool stack is very different. Yes. Yeah. So note taker is a lot more important. Making sure CRM is filled out, making sure it uses one of the frameworks, right? So Medic or whatever. But in high velocity sales, it's about how do we connect with customers and how do we increase the conversion rates at scale across multitude of different channels, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and email, et cetera. How do we have the right touch points with the customer where we invite them for an onboarding call or just having a chat, whatever that is, right? Plus we have multiple websites, which makes it more complicated, right? So how does the user transition from site 1, 2, 3? All those things need to be taken into account. But yeah.
And from, I won't understand any of the tools you're going to be telling me, but maybe for those listeners that want to have a little glimpse behind your stack.
Yeah. Sure. So on the backend, we have Golang. On all of the services, we also try to make sure that we minimize the amount of technologies that we use, because then engineers can contribute to any product. If you had different tech stacks on each product, well, good luck if somebody leaves the company or goes to vacation. Then we have on the front end, we have TypeScript and React. So everything in our stack is strictly typed, strictly checked. And then most of our hosting happens in AWS. So we have a good relationship with AWS. So we have, CI/CD pipelines there and all of the databases and just services are hosted there. Then for the database, we try to use PostgreSQL wherever possible, also not to mix up any technologies where we don't see fit. But for some use cases, we also have OpenSearch where it fits. So we try to use the right tool for the job. But for example, there is no reason to use MySQL if you have PostgreSQL because, they're very similar and PostgreSQL covers all of the use cases that we have. Then we also have so a lot of things are also hosted outside of AWS where we see fit due to different factors. So yeah, this is the core stack.
Also on the front-end side, as Daniel mentioned, we use React with the TypeScript. Then we are shipping a app to the App Store, which is on React Native. Then for the design, we use Figma, and Figma really has nice features like integrating with OpenAI, which helps you to, when you design stuff, helps you with the copy, with text. So it auto-completes prefills, gives you suggestions. So I believe it's a quite new feature. Then for the landing pages, we're using Webflow, which is gives us ability to ship fast because you don't need to write much code on Webflow. And it also gives the ability to go to market team to adjust content on the go. It's a very non-tech savvy friendly tool. So I think that's pretty much
for
it.
Communication, we use Slack, which is pretty general. For monitoring, we have Grafana and BetterStack, also Sentry for error monitoring. So from the paid tools, our project management happens in Jira. which is, in some startups can be considered like a very,
overkill.
but I think it works for us. We also use Confluence to document stuff there for support people and also just engineers in general about different products and such. And yeah, I think those are all of the major tools.
Did you say you're launching an app?
Yes, on phone. We're launching many things.
What is this
the-
for Salesforge or for one of the other
The
forges?
purpose of app is to have a Prime box, which is our Salesforge inbox on your phone, so you could receive replies and get notification on your phone. Because the reply time is very important. Like you need to reply fast, and if you get notification on your phone, like you can do it immediately.
So we're doing something more kick-ass, which is rolling out Chrome extensions as well. So you can interact with your prospects, say on LinkedIn, for example, and stuff like that. So that's the next big one that we're launching. And then multiple forges will be powering the extension.
So a little bit of a last part, but we've seen the past. We've seen what you guys are doing now. Let's look a little bit about the future of Salesforge. Where's Salesforge in 5 years? Is it like acquisition, IPO, something else?
So typically for an acquisition or an IPO, it takes, I think these days, 9 to 10 years. So would most likely not our, we most likely, we could be acquired along the way, right? So we do have time to time people engaging with us. So that's not out of the question, but I think, we definitely want to build a big business. This is our primary goal. IPO is definitely also on the table, I think, for this business, because ultimately the reason why there is an IPO potential is because you are building multiple products, and that then has an IPO
business,
potential, right? So it has a multi-product realm, right? Multiple products, multiple softwares, right? So you definitely can get very big. And if not, then the acquisition happens. We're definitely, as a team, we have many things we want to build also beyond the Forge. At some point in the future, we have other billion-dollar ideas, what we call, in our heads. But when it comes to the Forge itself, we are shipping more Forges, right? So as I said, we have 6 products right now. We will have at least a minimum of 10 products. Altogether, which will happen over a span of 2 years. And then I think that completes. But really, we only ship what we call must-have products that can either increase conversion rates with the whole ecosystem, and it can be used by thousands and thousands of, arguably millions of businesses out there.
No cannibalization.
What's that?
And no cannibalization.
Yes, there has to be high complementary fit. So, for example, this month we're launching a product called Leadsforge. And Leadsforge gives you the ability to source leads against your ideal customer profile criteria, and it will have that sort of ChatGPT-like experience. So that's highly complementary to the current stack, because everybody needs leads, and we want to give you the ability to get leads from any database in the world, but in an experience that in a sort of UI that can be used by anybody, even an intern, right? So you just go and chat to it like ChatGPT. We believe that's super powerful. So anything that's super powerful that can massively complement the stack, we will build that. Typically, as I said, we're a very lean team. That means typically we have like 1 or 2 engineers per product at this stage, and that's how we ship. So all we need to do is get 1 or 2 engineers to start a Forge.
So that's what you're going to be launching. But what's a product you haven't built yet, but you will?
Well, we have enough stuff to build.
I'm looking at the future here. It's
I'm not thinking like for some future products, because we already have planned a lot of forges, so I'm trying to focus on those ones.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
Insights Forge.
But this is one of the forges we already planned, but we are talking about like something.
What's an Insights Forge?
So that's basically using machine learning capabilities. So we are, in the background, we're building the data lake. So it's labeling the data that we have. And that's why it's also like important for us to have multiple products, because we just get more data this way.
Sure.
And after that, we can apply machine learning and actually provide insights for the customers, what are the best markets, what are the open rates, pickup rates, and stuff like that. So all of this is coming together, while we speak, actually, like the data is being gathered, and we just need to utilize machine learning on top
So
of it.
soon you'll be publishing a report on the state of Outbound by Salesforge
Yes.
On the real data, yes.
on
Exactly.
actual data.
Yes, so we can tell you all the things that work, things that don't work. Essentially, we want to inform the whole market rather than people just talk whatever on LinkedIn and stuff like that. We have vast amount of data, and we aggregate a lot of that data, and then we will provide insights essentially as to what works, what doesn't, for different industries, ICPs, you name it. Like there's a lot of different things that we're looking to do. And that's the Insights Forge. And think of it essentially as some web design. Someone provides you insights on different websites. Well, we'll provide you insights on what works in the world of sales execution and what doesn't.
Everybody needs interpretation of data anyway to better understand.
The thing is, your own data that you have in your CRM, that sits in your CRM, is not big enough to make any sort of informed decision. But if you get like 100x more data that tells you what works, what doesn't in that particular industry, that particular market, like US or UK, then you'll be able to adjust the way you do things per market.
You'll have included enrichment, or you already do, of data, like finding emails. You said Leadforge.
Yeah, Blitzscaling is gonna have enrichment capabilities, sourcing leads plus enriching data, similar to Clay, but it's gonna be like Clay for dummies. Like Clay is very complex tools, and the barrier of entry is very high. So that's why one of the reasons why we're building Blitzscaling.
Includes phone numbers, or
in the future, yes, but not right now, right? Because right now we only do email, right? So we don't have, it depends on demand. Actually, we'll see what people are searching for. Actually, right? It's like Google Trends. We'll be able to see exactly what people are looking for, and if we don't have that, we'll plug that in. It's very straightforward kind of approach.
Call Forge or Phone Forge or whatever.
No, so the phone capabilities will sit in Salesforge because Salesforge is the mothership. So all the execution happens in Salesforge, and the other forges just make Salesforge more powerful.
Some of your competitors are launching VoIP capabilities within their. So I guess that's probably
similar.
Something.
Yeah, similar stuff.
But not just providing phone numbers. You would actually enable calling as one of the, task in a sequence.
Yeah, one of the channels.
One of the channels.
Yes.
Okay. And you said multi-channel is coming up this month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As well.
So the LinkedIn, we're rolling out LinkedIn capabilities, and also looking to shake up what we call that market. Essentially, every channel is a multi-million-dollar business.
Sure.
Every channel. So if we add a channel, it's a multi-million-dollar business. If you add VoIP, it's again another multi-million-dollar revenue stream.
Is that a feature or is it a product? Is that like?
Depends how you look at it. But I mean, it lives within Salesforge, so it's a feature. So it's not a separate. Yes, like being able to execute multi-channel is a requirement in mid-market and enterprise companies,
Absolutely.
right? So we want to cater for.
I've been asking you this for a year.
Yes, so we know.
Finally, I'm getting my wish. Just pure outbound for me was never really. It needed to be multi-channel.
Yeah, but we also don't want to do things the way that other companies do.
Yeah,
so we want to do it differently, and to do differently, it's more of a challenge for people like Daniel and Dovydas to orchestrate that, because it's not just about, hey, we can do stuff on LinkedIn, but how can we do things on LinkedIn, for example, as a channel, differently to everybody else, and to orchestrate that, because we're all about unique positioning in the market, so we need to do things that are in a way that are only possible in Salesforge and no other tool, right? We want to be like, we want you to pick Salesforge because we do things in a particular way, in a way that maximizes your efficiencies. And to do that, it's a bigger technical challenge than a bunch of other tools in the market. So,
okay, but what's the most exciting technical challenge ahead for you and your team?
I think all of those products have their certain technical challenges that are exciting. Like, for example, Salesforge will have NLP, where we need to process natural language to understand it, and basically build ChatGPT as well, with a chat where you can conversate. So you need to really understand how chats work, and create a very elegant solution that's also scalable and can integrate with multiple providers and stuff like that. We also have, this conditional thing. For example, there is a joke in software engineering that, in interviews, they're asking for binary trees that will never, be used in a job. In Salesforge, it's different. We actually do use binary trees for those conditional, challenges and things like that. And also like building that data lake, I think, once we, harvest all of this data and do machine learning, which actually benefits not only the clients, but also the AI agent, because AI agent by default, it will use like all of the products that we have. So for example, for insights, Insights Forge, it will know what are the best, target for that market, when to send, outbound communication and stuff like that. So it will be just, it will just graduate whenever Insights Forge will be released.
If you want a challenge, join Salesforce. This is very different.
Well, so wrap it up there with that last comment. But I have one last question for you guys. What's your one message to founders? And if you could put that one message on a billboard for every startup founder to see, what would it be?
From my side, it would be just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, because like when I talk to people, a lot of people are talking about that they want to start a startup, but they never do it. So like
take the plunge.
Yes, exactly. And like every person that I talk to, he like maybe he has some idea, like maybe he's thinking to maybe after a few years I will do it, but it never happens.
Yeah.
So if you're like thinking when is the right time, like now.
To put on the billboard that just do it as a trademark of Nike Corporation, please.
That's why we will say just ship it.
Just ship it. Next.
Yeah, like for me, it would be probably solve problems that people are ready to pay for. Like this sentence is just the core of everything. Like no outbound tactics, doesn't matter. The technologies you use doesn't matter. The market you're in doesn't matter. Like
who's buying?
Yeah, exactly. If this at the core this exists, then everything else is just like tactics, and of course execution is extremely important. Like idea is nothing without execution, but this like general solving a problem and being able to charge for it, that's like the core.
Yeah. And this is the best way to validate the idea when customer transfers you money. Like, because people, when you do those user interviews to validate the idea, sometimes they're being nice to you. Like, oh yeah, I like this. Maybe it could be useful to someone, like, but not me. And then you're thinking, oh, he said it's nice. I'm gonna build it.
Yes, and
can't just be your mother.
Yes. And the funny thing is that if I would put it on a banner, nobody would be looking at it because it's not sexy. So, for example, I read, Lean Startup, and I probably internalized it only after creating a startup like this one, actually. Because one thing is to read it, but another thing is to actually live it and understand it. Like there is like a lot of great ideas, and if you follow them by heart and understand why they're there, it will definitely benefit you. But usually, people read that book, start a startup, and forget all of the advice that's in that book.
Yeah. You still have time to read? I thought you were shipping.
No,
it was before starting Salesforge.
Right now, it's actually like audiobooks, and the office has gotten a bit farther for me, so even more audiobooks for me.
Okay. And last billboard?
I don't know. I could say many different things. But I'll probably say one thing, which is like you need to work full time. And when I mean full time, that means 7 days a week, a minimum of 12 hours every day, and
especially the US is in your zone.
Yes, especially if US. Yes. So on that topic, hire people that work actually the time zone of your ICP. So our sales team and customer success team work from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. to ensure we're on the ball. Also, support team works till midnight, for example, things like that. But as a founder, like unless you work 7 days a week for the first year or two, you're not gonna make it.
I think that's totally underestimated.
And a lot of people are like, oh yes, I'm working in this startup. Like, oh yes, I'm 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. whatever. Nope. And it's like, if you want to have a side hustle, like things like that, no problem at all. But if you want to go big, like we want to go big, you have to put in the hours for a year or two, and then find what's called the lieutenants to pass the baton over, and that manage different parts of your business. But in the early days, you need to be living and breathing, and there's like millions of different problems that need to be solved over the first 2 years, and you be heads down looking at your laptop all day long. Yes, your missus is gonna hate you, your kid's not gonna see you around much, but
Sacrifice.
But yeah, it's a sacrifice that's temporary, and a lot of people don't get that. And a lot of people are, in this world, still what I call startup wannabes. Sometimes I call them the snowflakes. But you have to put in the hour, you have to do the grind, you have to be persistent, and things will pan out for you. And if you just keep, again, head down and talk to your customers, work 7 days a week, ship that product, listen to your customers, connect with them on Slack, offline, whatever, do stuff. Things will work out for you.
Yeah, exactly. And just to add to that, it's also about embracing problems and uncertainty, not being afraid of them. Understand that it's absolutely normal to, feel, challenges and just overcome through them. And even when you have a bigger company with 40 people like we have right now, we're still the last line of defense where, the problems that we're facing, if they are coming to us, they're not pleasant. But you just live to just learn to live with them, and also kind of accept the challenge and like the challenge, embrace that it's challenging, because building a startup is a challenge of its own. And when you have a lot of people, like smart people surrounding you, they will kind of gatekeep a lot of problems from you. But those problems that cannot be gatekept, those are hard problems.
You will be the last resort.
Yeah.
You become the guy who puts out the fires.
Exactly.
On a permanent basis. That's your job.
Right, exactly. And when you're just starting out, you cannot really feel highs without the lows. The lows are what makes it interesting. Like right now, we're having this podcast, remembering those tough times. It's so nice right now. You really put it in perspective. And right now, I'm always thinking, the challenges that I have right now, in 10 years, it's going to be fun to look back on that. So, just be excited about it. That's the journey.
It is the journey of a freight train. But all right. Thank you, guys. I think that puts it all in perspective for whoever's listening and wants to jump into the startup world. Don't do it. Or just do it.
Just ship it.
Just ship it.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.